Welcome to the DK Custom Products channel. Today we're going to be installing the force flow fan on the Tri-Glide. I've been running the Ward's Parts Works and Love Jugs fans for well over a decade. I have run this on one bike for a little while, and we'll put a video up above where we did testing. They work 98% as good at cooling as the best Love Jugs, and so I just wanted to change up the look. And so we're going to be putting this on the Tri-Glide today. If you enjoy our videos, if you could please give us a like, thumbs up, a comment, and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us out. So let's look at what's involved with the force flow fan. This is the box it comes in. It's got instructions, which we're going to go through. It has the fan, and you can see that this looks much better than the, I think, than the Love Jugs. And it has a horn built into it, connectors, and then it has more connectors and a mounting bracket down here. And then you can run it either with a switch to turn it on and off, which is the way I prefer. But for this installation, we're going to use the thermostatically controlled. When the engine gets to a certain temperature, it clicks the fan on. When it drops below that temperature, it clicks the fan off. So we're going to install that, and we're going to get at it. So the first step is to get the seat off, because we have to access the electrical under there. So let's go ahead and pull the backrest out and take the sheepskin and air hawk off. And then it only took Harley about 10 or 15 years to start using a thumb screw, so you don't have to get a screwdriver back there, but they finally did it, and that's nice. We'll take the seat off, and we'll put the thumb screw back in here so we don't misplace it. And now we have access to our electronics. The next thing we have to do, we can take the side cover off, because we're going to have to access down in here to the diagnostic port. And then the next thing we're going to do is take the tank off, so that we have access to the channel that's, to the wiring channel that's in the instructions to do that. So we're going to go ahead and take the tank off. There's 4 bolts, there's two here, there's one on either side up here. Those are going to come off. If you don't know how to take your tank off, look at your manual and it will show you how to remove your tank. So the reason that we took the tank off, because I've installed this before, just wiring straight into the battery without taking the tank off, but we wanted to do the installation according to the instructions. And one of the things is to get the wires that are running from the fan up into this channel and then down. And below this, inside here, is where there's a few miles of wires. Okay. If anybody's ever thought that there's not a difference between 2004 bikes and these new bikes with all these body control modules, ECMs, ABS, look at all these wires. All sitting in this channel here. We're not going to do anything with these wires. We're just opening the channel because we're going to put some more wires in here from the Jim's fans to make it a super clean install. So we're following the directions, but we did go a little bit out of order. We put the thermostat on here first to see if it would work in this location. And, you know, in the description on our website, it says that if you have a twin-cooled model, you know, that uses the radiators, not the oil-cooled M8s, that you just have a big oil cooler, that you're not going to be able to mount it right here, which is where they say to mount it. But we did find that you can mount it right here. We did have to shorten this spacer about 1/16 of an inch because this metal plate has to sit flush against the rocker cover so that it will transfer the heat to the thermostat here. So we did verify that that will work in this location. Like I said, I've installed these before, but I've never used the thermostat. I always like to just use the on-off switch so that I can control when it comes on and off. But we decided to show people with twin-cooled bikes how they can. And so normally on every bike except for twin-cooled bike, twin cams, M8s that are oil-cooled, this would mount up here and it would do fine. But see, this hose right here for the twin-cooled gets in the way of the thermostat mount. So we just put it back here where there is room for it. And so that is done. So when you're taking the horn off, make sure you unplug your wires first so you don't put stress on them by trying to grab the horn away. There we go. Okay. So here's a good Harley horn, in case you haven't seen what's in there. And a little trick, whenever you buy anything electrical, especially fans, before you go to all the trouble of mounting it, always test it to make sure that it does work and that it's not defective from the factory. And I've already done that. I've already hooked this up to a battery I had, made sure that it spins. It's not necessary, it's not in the instructions, but in the off chance that you got a defective part from the factory, it's nice to know that before you go to all the work of installing it. So, and I've already done that. So the instructions say to assemble the force flow cylinder head cooler, install the cooler assembly on the 2 rubber isolator mounts. So here's the 2 rubber isolator mounts, 1, 2. And here's hardware. We have washers. We have 2 acorns for what's visible, and then 2 nylock nuts that you don't have to use thread locker on for the side that's not visible. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to install the cooler assembly on the 2 isolator mounts. Slide the threaded stud through the back of the fan. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this here. Use the washers with the acorn nuts. On the back, you do not use any washer. Okay. So we put our 2 isolators on here. Put these on here. Is it still recording? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was able to hold that. There we go. So those are mounted on there. And we have to put thread locker on these 2 acorns. And I hope you all aren't bored with this basic stuff, but anytime we try and cut out the basic stuff on a install video, other people ask, oh, you skipped this step and didn't show it. So we're trying to show every single step on this install. So we have thread locker in both of these acorns. Okay. Make sure you mount it this way, not with the bracket the other way. It's easy to think that this bracket should be turned around where this is up here. And the reason why is because you would think they would want their name showing, but the proper way to mount it is like this, which their name's not even showing. And of course, when we go to wire it up, all the wires will be above this bracket, away from the fan, and also away from the cylinders rather than being down here. So using a box cutter knife or diagonal cutter, cut a notch out of the left side of the black harness trough. 1 inch square, it says. Should be 1 inch square with no rough edges. Locate the main wiring harness supplied with the force flow fan and position it across the top frame wheel on top of the existing wiring harness. You need to lay the cooler harness on the left side of the harness trough so that you have the thermostat with bracket and white connector near the original horn location. We've run the wire that plugs into the Jim's fan is going to do it so right here. Here's the wires for the horn that plug in to these wires right here. And of course, when we plug them in, we're going to take the extra wire and zip tie it up out of the way. We have run these wires down the trough, and at the end of these wires is just a relay that we just have to position somewhere, and then this goes to the ground on the battery. And then there are 3 different ways that you can hook the power wire up. I've hooked this power wire straight to the battery. That's my preferred way of doing it. It's easier, it's faster. I just like it that way. The other thing you could do, you could use a posi tap and go into the power off of the diagnostic port, which is right here. Or the way that we're going to do it, because those ways are easy to do. We have a connector with 5 dead ports, and then just 1 that we're going to put into here and plug that into here. And so we're going to get power off of there so that when we turn the key on, there's power going to it. And then if the thermostat activates it, it'll run. When you turn the key off, the fan will go off. And so that's what we're going to do. So it may be a little bit intimidating at first looking at all these different wires, but it's simple. Wires for the horn, wires for the fan. The relay just has to sit somewhere. This goes to the ground on the battery. This we're going to put into this connector and plug it into the diagnostic port. So now we can plug this into the port. And now we're not grounded. I have to take this off. And there are more wires here than factory because I have my electric heated gear port wired in here, and then there's also the pigtail for the battery tender wired in here. So we're not going to use this anymore. We are going to put dielectric grease on this new connector. Both sides, some dielectric grease, and then we have the main connector and 4 more, including for the gems. So that's done. Now, a little trick. Do you see this silver S-shaped bracket here. This goes in and holds the front. So you have to get the whole thing, this piece of plastic, underneath that bend. So you sort of got to push this forward, down, and then back to get it locked in to position. So we're going to do that right now. Down, and then get it far enough down. There we go. Now we got it back where these holes back here are lining up. This is one of the few places I don't use thread locker. These are, I've never had them come loose, and they're tightened down on plastic. I'm just holding this tray from jostling around. And you can see when this cover's on that the positive terminal is completely covered up, and you do have access to the negative terminal right there. We put this back in here and it clicks in. Also, this little piece slides right onto there. We'll do that first because it'll be hard to get to once we have the ECM in there. It just slides on there. Then this butts up against this little ledge right there and then clicks down on both sides, and that's the ECM right there. And this just sits right down in here, and we're done with that. So now what we're going to do, we have these wires for the horn and for the fan here. We have our Deutsch connector for power going down to our diagnostic port. We have, we got to find a place for the relay. So I guess the relay is just going to sit right there.
As far as the install goes, I think the next step would be to put that cover back on the trough.
Yeah. So let's put this cover back on. I guess we're going to do the same thing Harley did, which is run a zip tie underneath here to help it. Okay, so let's get a zip tie and feed it under there before the cover's on there. So we got our zip tie in place, and the cover goes, these are there, this is there. Just to protect those cables. We're going to zip tie this for an extra hold. All right. So we're using the original bolts, and you'll notice they have very thick washers on them. Heavy duty. Okay, and let's see. This is for the horn, and then this is for that. And again, as stated in the instructions, all these connections need to be made above the bracket, because below the bracket is where the fan is, and also very close to the cylinder fins, which are probably hotter than you want the wires exposed to. Okay, now, the instructions say to tighten these to 35 to 40 foot-pounds. If you don't have a lot of experience doing this, I would recommend using a torque wrench. Probably should use a torque wrench anyway. Okay, so when you do the horn, there is no positive in it. I mean, it doesn't matter which way you connect them. And we need to use some dielectric grease. Always use dielectric grease. It just saves any potential future electrical problem due to corrosion or bad connection. So we're just going to hook these up right now, and then we'll figure out how to bundle them up. There. These can only go, this can only go in one way, so you don't have to worry about putting it in wrong. This is the way it goes, right like that. And then I don't have, the fan's not going to come on, I don't believe, because I don't think there's an override. No, oh, I got to turn the key on. Oh, also, once it's mounted, you should spin the fan just to make sure that you have clearance and there's nothing back there that's going to interrupt. No, it's not going to come on till that thermostat gets to 140. But the horn should work. Okay, so that's the horn that comes built in on the Jim's force flow. All right, so now it's just a matter of bundling the wires. Okay, so I like to put this right up in here. Then I'm going to have this sneaking out of the side cover. Okay. Now we got to bundle these up nice and clean. Let's get some zip ties. Okay, so I think I'm going to zip tie right here to hold that like that. You know what I'm really tempted to do is use silicone tape and just put this right like that. See, and there's little pieces of metal, one of which is hot. I think I should tape. Let me get some silicone tape. Okay, and then just zip tie it. I mean, it's really blowing air around that cylinder. So that's the installation. That's not how I would have done it. I really like to have it hooked up straight to the power. That way I can turn the fan on and off. But we did go ahead and show how you can hook a thermostat up on a twin cool. You saw how we did that. And when it hit 140, or maybe even a little bit not as hot as 140, it went ahead and kicked the fan on. And the ignition is still on, which is why the fan's still going. If I turn the ignition off, the fan goes off. So that's it. I like that look much better than the Mighty Mites look. I do have to put some shrink wrap around this wire so that that orange isn't sticking out. And so the Mighty Mites, the small love jug fans, work with the oil cooler here, but the large love jugs do not. You can't do the oil cooler, and these things desperately need an oil cooler. We'll put a link up here where we tested with and without an oil cooler. These things run, these twin cooled bikes with quote unquote water cooling or coolant run hotter than the ones that just have an oil cooler, because there's nowhere for the oil to get rid of all the heat that it's absorbing. So it's important to have an oil cooler on a twin cooled bike, and this obviously gives you clearance to do that. I think that's just a much better look than the Mighty Mites. So, and you can have it thermostatically controlled. You never have to worry about turning the fans off, which I have forgotten a few times to turn them off and run my battery down. But you can see the engine is still over 140 degrees, otherwise it would be shutting off. And it's been going 3 or 4 minutes now. And of course, if perchance you want to turn the fans off, even though they're thermostatically controlled, you can just do that and click them off. That easy. If you have questions about fitment on your bike or any questions to do with cooling, please send an email to support@dkcustomproducts.com or give a call to the phone number in the description below. You all ride safe out there.